Welcome to USC Rossier About the Author series. My name is Tom Arteaga, and I serve as the Director of Alumni Engagement at USC Rossier. Now, our About the Author series introduces our community to USC alumni authors as we explore the author's latest work and we learn about the writing process and the publishing process that they experienced. So today's episode features Jenny Morgan. Jenny received her Master's of Arts in Teaching from USC Rossier. She's an educator who has worked with children in nearly every age range, from pre-kindergarten through 12th grade. She's written her first book, The Wondrous Adventures of Julie O'Day, A Day at the Beach. Her book is described as a testament to the beauty of multiculturalism, child curiosity, and kindness. And it is a perfect read for young children to learn about social themes, life lessons, and the power of friendship. So, Jenny, thank you very much for joining us today. It's great to have you with us.
Oh, Tom, thank you so much. This is such a joy. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to meet and share about my book.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I'd like to share in the chat with everybody. I'm going to make sure I put this in there right now.
Sure.
So I'm going to put links to the book, and they can learn more about you and about the book, and also a link to where people can also actually purchase the book as well. So I'm dropping that in the chat for everybody right now.
Thank you.
So, but congratulations on your first book. To get us started, could you just tell us about the story of your book?
Of course. Thank you so much. Let me tell you, this book was totally inspired by my students. I was a first grade teacher starting at a school in Santa Monica, and that class was just so funny. They were so curious, and they had so many questions about the world and where people came from and what are they doing and what are they wearing and what are they thinking. And it was just constantly in my mind that there was such wonder and curiosity about the world as first graders. So this story is rooted in that curiosity, in that wonder. And what I also wanted to incorporate was the fact that children are so connected for so many different reasons. And I'm a first grade teacher currently. So as you can imagine, I see this on a daily basis. I mean, this story was truly inspired by my personal experiences with my students, and that they can find commonalities and connections with each other over the sweetest and simplest thing. And so the story is rooted around a young girl. Her name is Julie O'Day, and she meets a boy from Paris on the beach in Santa Monica. And they truly just become friends because of a beach ball. And she threw a ball, and but even though they're from totally different parts of the world, Julie's family is Irish and she lives in Santa Monica. Marcus Lamore's family is from Paris and he's visiting on vacation. They just become best friends. And I'm really excited to share that this story is a series. And so there's 3 more books coming.
Oh, that's great. Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Cool. Wow. Well, that's great. We'll definitely dive into that, the series portion and news there. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
So, and that's great to hear the inspiration came from your classroom. As far as the idea of writing the book, was that always something you had and wanted to do? No?
Funny enough, and I'm going to be completely honest.
Yeah.
Being a writer was always terrifying to me. But then I mean this sincerely, grad school really brought out the writer in me. Nice. Working in my classes at Rossier, I was constantly observing students and writing analyses for my time in the classroom. And so through those lessons, you're taught to observe students, write down your observations and provide a very accurate account of what you're seeing in the classroom. And so funny enough, I enjoyed those papers so much. And I felt in some ways that, my teachers, I did okay. So I was like, okay, maybe I can do this. And truly the story came after my very first year teaching at first grade at my current school. And I know this is going to sound silly, but I had about a month off And teachers, we have summers off,
Yeah.
and I missed my kids. I
Yeah.
missed my students. And
Yeah.
so I was laughing about retelling a story about them one day. And I can't even explain it. I just sat down at my computer and I started typing. I typed the story in about an hour and a half. But then I spent the next 7 years revising and editing and, adding more, the whole process. So it was a 7-year process, but I did write it in an hour and a half. But curating it and making it, even better, and just making the connections to certain nuances in the book was really important to me, and the characters and all that. So I had lots of table reads with family and friends. And so they were very kind to give me their feedback. And then once I was given an opportunity to apply for a writing grant, I applied for a writing grant, and that's kind of how everything got kickstarted, which was really exciting.
Wow. Tell me more about the writing grant. How does that work? How did you find that? What's that? Where's that come from?
So I work at a school in Santa Monica, and it's a independent private school, and the board of trustees offered teacher grants for either professional development or writing or passion project or a writing grant. So for me, I just decided, I'll just go for this. I'm probably not going to get it, but I was shocked I got it. And that's really when I came to the realization of, oh my goodness, this can actually happen.
Yeah.
Because in my situation, I worked with Mascot Books, and they're an independent book publisher. They're a hybrid publisher. So you still have an editor, you still have, your publishing team. I had a marketing team. And so there is capital that's needed, to make that investment into the project. But they set me up with my illustrator, and she lives in Lake Como, Italy. So my editor was emailing her for me when I was in the classroom, but we were communicating via email constantly. So it was such a collaborative process. And, but I really want to encourage people that, for 7 years, I had no idea how this was going to happen. I thought I was just going to raise the money myself. And I did submit my manuscript to literary agencies and book publishers during COVID. During COVID, they were accepting unsolicited material. So I sent it to, I think, 50 different locations, agents and publishers. And I heard back from a lot of them. It was nice. That part was validating as well. But so many of them were then inundated with content. So,
Sure.
And then I just thought, I can do this. I can find a way to do this. So I then spent the next few months researching the most successful independent book publishers. And I came across Mascot Books. And when I looked at their platform, I was really impressed with the product and the process, and that it was a completely collaborative process, but you still have your editor. You still have people that are reading your work to say if this is something that they think that they can possibly work with. So that was a process that was very exciting, but also terrifying at the same time, because someone's reading your book and you hope they like it. So thankfully I received positive feedback. So right away they told me that they could see it as a series, which was exciting.
That's great.
So
I want to step back a little bit and just sort of expand a little bit more on that process, right? So you wrote the story in an hour, right? As far as the hour, and then you said it's about 7 years of table reads and getting input from friends and family. And then after that 7 years, that was the point where you had started to research or reach out to the publishers. I just want to understand that timeline.
Yes, of course. So 2015, I had the idea for the story. I sat down, 2016, June of 2016, I sat down and I wrote up the story.
Yeah.
2020 happened, and then we're all home with lots of time on our hands.
Yep.
So I did my research over COVID and was submitting to the agencies and the publishing houses and through those, I think it was about a year and a half of like going back and forth and submitting and hearing back and, following up and all that. That's when I decided, number one, it's a story I'm really proud of. And number two, it's a story that I think is even more important to share today with kids.
Yeah.
Embracing that friendship can look and feel any certain way. You can make connections with anybody and be friends with them no matter what the connection is. You can make that connection, especially for young ones. And once the grant opportunity was presented, that's really when the ball started rolling for me. It was 2022 that I finally received the grant, and then 2023 is when it was actually published.
Nice. And I want to touch on one of the questions we did receive from one of our audience members was just that question, kind of what's the investment, right? As far as, do you need some of your own resources, or to, access resources from somewhere to start a process like this? And you said, fortunately, you were able to receive that grant, right? So, but is that what sort of your experience obviously was that, right? You needed to put you needed some investment from your side to make that happen, right?
Correct. In my circumstance, it was with the hybrid publisher. Certainly if you pitch a story to a publisher and they love it, they're going to pocket they'll take the charge and they take it for you. But right. in this case, because I'm a debut author, I've never done it before. I thought, the best route is to present this to a hybrid publisher that can support me through this process. I've never done it before. So in this case, the team at Mascot was just incredible. And so I felt very supported in the process. The capital that I was able to put forth in the very beginning was also depending upon how many books you want to start with. I started with 750 books. Okay. And in about 2 months, I sold all of them. So I had to reorder 1,000 more books. So I'm still in the process of selling those.
How did you pick 750? Like, how did you get to that number? Right.
What's amazing with Mascot, and I feel like I'm pitching Mascot books, but what's amazing with Mascot is there's certain tiers of how many books you want to sell, what services exactly you're needing. So it's kind of a large range, to be honest with you, but my initial grant was 5,000.
Got it. And then they have that formula that kind of tells you with this amount,
exactly,
this is what you're looking at. Okay.
Exactly. And I don't want to discourage people, because $5,000, especially if you're a student, that sounds like a lot of money.
Sure.
And it is a lot of money. However, there are so many grant opportunities out there, especially for, stories that are celebrating diversity and celebrating multiculturalism and kindness and childhood curiosity, which are it's the ethos of my book. So I want to encourage anybody who's out there, if you do need fundraising, Kickstarter, or there's wonderful platforms that if you put your ideas out there, there are a lot of people who want to celebrate and support great stories.
Yeah, that's great. So kind of thinking about maybe for an individual writer, what is the content? What is my story about? And then researching possible support and different avenues of support that are out there based on what you're writing, what you're thinking, just like you experienced as well.
Yes. And I think certainly too, like through USC, there's so many incredible organizations that are directly supporting certain causes. And I think that that's also something they can, reach out to, whether it's a professor or whether it's an alumni in particular in that area that they're of interest. That's certainly an opportunity as well.
We have one other question from one of our guests, just talking about advice you give people just beginning the writing process. You talked about that, getting your story written, and then 7 years. I'm sure during that 7 years there was ups and downs and sort of that, how do you keep that momentum going with your writing?
I think that there has to be a spark. There has to be, your story has to be rooted in something that you're incredibly passionate about. And for me, it was lived experience with my students. I witnessed it with my own eyes. I watched their curiosity. I watched their friendships blossom overnight. Um, I also watched how beautifully the most unlikely two students found each other and became best friends over, a shared interest in rocks. It was very sweet, so you have this beautiful connection that you're watching. And for me at the times, 7 years ago, it felt like a really important story to share.
Yeah.
And then amazingly, 7 years later, well, now 8 years later, 2024, I almost feel like it's even more important.
Yeah.
And I feel like kids are, especially because we were home during COVID and I was a Zoom teacher for 2.5 years during COVID. I was teaching fourth grade at the time.
Yeah.
I know how important it is for kids to be together and to make those connections and to make those friendships and, their social emotional wellness and development. I mean, it blossoms when they can be together.
Yeah.
So, and I can attest to that. I see it every day in the classroom.
Nice.
So
Nice.
I think, but to go back to your question, I think I'm getting excited about sharing, but I think to get started, just start.
Yeah.
Pencil to paper, even if you have to do like a story map, or if you have to just kind of do an outline of the story first, just get your ideas on paper, and just start.
And I also hear you talking about, your motivation and your inspiration was your students, right? So just making sure that you're staying connected to whatever's inspiring you, right?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
making sure you have that as a part of your life and a part of your process. I would imagine could help you in keeping that momentum moving forward.
Totally.
So wanted to jump back to sort of the publishing process, right? So you did your research, you identified, you reached out, you had some grant support, which was wonderful to be able to start that process. Like, what is that process like? You have to pitch to them. Is it a yes? We'll definitely do this moving forward, or is there like a big wait and see period? Like, what is that like?
Thank you for asking, because it was such a journey. I had to submit my story idea, and then pretty quickly I heard from the editor of Mascot, and he wanted to set up a call. And I had heard no so many times, so I thought, okay, it's probably a no. Same thing as the grant. It's probably a no, but I was shocked. He said, "Oh my gosh, we love this story and we think this is fantastic and we'd love to work with you." And I was like, "Wait, what?" So, like, this isn't supposed to happen like this, but it did. And so that's when it was like really, really exciting. He sent over the proposal of, what they could offer as a hybrid publisher. And what I want to share is, hybrid publishing, it's the combination of you have your team, you have your editor, your publisher, you have your illustrator, everyone, you have the manufacturing, you have the just the whole team supporting you. And this is your product. It is the initial investment. So it's the combination of the self-publishing, but also you are working with a publisher. So there are expectations of you, and you have to edit and revise, as we all can imagine. But it was really exciting because once they were on board, then I got really excited because I felt validated in that this was maybe something that could happen. And then what was wonderful is I was assigned my editor right away. Once the contracts were signed and everything, I met with my editor. I sent over the manuscript. We had some Zoom calls initially, and I'm a teacher full time, so it had to be something that I could, and I told him that up front. I said, "Hey, just to be super candid, I am unavailable between the hours of 7:30 and 3:30. I cannot take a call. I can't check an email. My kids are first." So this was 100% an out of school, after school process for me. It was, but it was so exciting because I was working with my illustrator who was in Italy at the time, but my editor was communicating. So we did most of our communication via email. And once the editing and revising was down to where we were really happy with the product, that's when I met with my illustrator, and I sent her inspiration pictures to give her an idea of what I was looking for, like the feeling and the vibe of the book that I was hoping to achieve. And truly, to her credit, her name is Chiara Chavati. She did an unbelievable job with the illustrations. She absolutely nailed it. And she was incredibly patient with me because I was a little nitpicky about a lot of the pictures. So I had her go back and forth and fix a few things, but she was wonderful. And I want to reiterate too, this process, because it's a hybrid publisher, it was such an enjoyable experience. It wasn't overwhelming. At no point did I think, oh my gosh, I can't do both. I can't do my job and publish a book at the same time. It was really exciting and it was really fun.
And you never felt like control was taken out of your hands, right?
No.
It sounds like the feedback you had on the illustration, I mean, you were able to make it your book based on your vision.
Yes.
And that partnership was a true partnership.
Yes.
Sort of what I'm hearing from you.
Yes. Right? I think that is the main, I would say I would encourage any debut author to consider hybrid publishing, because if you are really deeply connected to your story, I mean, if you take it to any other publisher or any other literary agent, they love to really rip it apart. And so, but what was really nice with my editor, I made it clear that, this is a story I worked on for 7 years and I'm really proud of it. However, I'm open to feedback. And if you think that, there's something that doesn't really make sense, I'm happy to explain my vision and what I'm trying to convey. And if it's unclear, let me know. And so what was nice is there were a few lines in question of this doesn't really make sense. So we would then have a conversation about it. And then I would say, well, this is what I'm trying to say. And she would say, okay, let's maybe tweak a few words, and then it totally makes sense. So what was really nice is she was very receptive to how much I wanted to keep the story as it was, but then, help me with editing and revising and all of that. So
that's great. Now, when you look back at that first document that you wrote in an hour and you compare it to the published book, right? Like how do you compare those two? Are they pretty similar still, or what does that look like?
You know what? I love to tell you, it is pretty close. I mean, I added a few stanzas, and I added some more, lines that I felt were important, or omitted some words. And, but the core story is exactly how it was at the beginning, which is amazing. That was my hope. But what was really fun, where for me it came full circle, was I read the book to my current first graders. And I had written it for my first grader 7 years prior. So it was a full circle moment, but I showed them all the red editing marks. I took a screenshot of one of my emails. And excuse me, I said, I just want you to know that what we're doing as a class, I teach writers workshops. So I told them, I said, what we're doing as a class is what authors do in real life. I said, this is what my paper looked like when I was working with my editor. And they just were like, oh my gosh, they were so excited. So I think for them, there was buy-in of what we're doing in the classroom, that it actually does translate to later on in life. So
what a great experience to share that with the students, for them to see that and learn from what you're going through as well at that time. That's great. That's great.
Thank you.
So, so we've touched on a lot: the writing process, the publishing process. So hybrid publishing, right, is maybe what folks could take a look at and research if that's not something they've explored as of yet right now with the maybe something they're writing. you talked a little bit. I wanted to just, I'm trying taking a look at some of the questions we have from our audience. We talked about sort of the expenses, part of this with hybrid editing. Um, you touched on sort of how to keep the motivation going with your writing. One question was just about recommending for first steps when you're thinking about writing a children's book. What do you recommend as far as those first steps?
Great question. What I enjoyed the most was actually writing the story. That was the most fun for me.
Yeah.
Then the process of publishing was also very fun for me. I'm brand new to this process of selling a book and excuse me, and marketing a book. And so I hired a marketing team. They've been so incredible in helping me not only get the book on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. That's what I also wanted to share, that Mascot Books, they have their direct contacts with all the top resale booksellers.
Yeah.
And so they're helping to not only get your book online, but then helping you make those connections to even get the books in stores as well, in person. So for me, I think knowing that you have a great story is important. But then if you really want to publish a book, think about all the other stages. Yeah. Are you comfortable with the publishing process? Are you comfortable with someone editing and revising your work and giving you feedback? Or can you accept feedback? Sometimes great, sometimes not great. Sure. Are you open to working with an illustrator? And then once the book is published, how are you going to promote yourself? How are you going to market your book? If you don't want to have a marketing team, are you going to put your book online? I was able to create a website for my book. And a lot of what I've done for the book, I created the website. I was able to promote it on my social media. Thankfully, my school was so incredibly supportive. I've done author visits in our library at school. So for kindergarten through third grade, I've had in-person author visits with the students. And I've taught all of them. So they were like, what? Miss Morgan wrote a book? So I think that's the fun part. For me, I've enjoyed all the stages, and each stage is really important, that you're thoughtful in your approach. And so again, knowing that the story is important is wonderful. And then also being on board with all the other processes that are going to come very quickly.
Right. Well, that's great. Well, we're going to just have a few more questions here before we wrap up. Sure. One question from our audience. Do you mind sharing the name of your marketing team that you hired, you worked with?
Yes, it's all through Mascot.
Through the publishing Mascot, they provided that.
Yes.
That service.
Yes. And that's why I can't say enough wonderful things about them. It was such a seamless transition from day one, editing and revising the book, to the manuscript, and then meeting with the illustrator, and then finalizing the book, and then moving right into marketing, and then the actual publication of the book. So they started my marketing in June, and my book wasn't even coming out until October. So they started it ahead of time. But again, that was something that I wanted as part of my whole investment. You certainly don't have to have a marketing team, but I did, because I'm a full-time teacher. And marketing is a world that especially the literary world of marketing, that's Sure. not something that's in my wheelhouse. Sure. So they have done an exceptional job for me, and I can't recommend them enough.
That's great. That's great. So I shared the website in the chat. If any of our guests have questions or have a follow-up, I know there's a contact link on the website. Is that the best way for people to reach out?
Yes.
Those questions get to you, right? They don't go into some invisible inbox somewhere, right? So
no.
if people have follow-up questions, please utilize the website and the chat.
Yes.
To reach out. And we also shared the link directly to Amazon, so you can see the Amazon listing. If anyone's interested in purchasing the book for their children or for their classroom, perhaps, it's a great way to support and to purchase the book there.
Wonderful.
So, final question for you is sort of what's next? You talked about the series, so what's next?
Yes, thank you so much for asking. I am so excited to say that the next 3 books are mapped out, and I can't wait. I have both characters traveling together, and so that process, the whole process gets to start all over again for me. So I'm very excited. It's been, I mean, the first book took me 7 years, but I kind of know what I'm doing now. So I don't think it'll take 7 years, but the next 3 books are in the works.
That's great. And with that team around you, right? That partnership that you have, they're able to help move that process along, I would imagine,
Yes.
so much quickly. Well, congratulations. That's wonderful on the
Thank you.
series. Congratulations on the first book. Thank you very much for sharing your experience with us today. Also want to thank you for your service to USC. You know, you've sort of been a volunteer as our alumni ambassador. So for any of our guests, you might see Jenny at our events, you know, helping make connections for students and alumni. Very thankful for your volunteerism in that way. But again, congratulations on your book and best of luck
Thank you.
with the series. We'll have to have you back to talk about what it's like to oversee a series of books as well. So
Tom, you're wonderful. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure. This is so much fun, and I'm just incredibly grateful. I'm here because of USC. So thank you.
That's great. And thank you to all of our guests today, to all of our alumni and students and friends who've joined us today. Hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And once again, thank you, Jenny, and thank you to everyone for joining us. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Bye, Dad.